I'm Larry Weeks, and this is Bounce. Conversations about challenge, whether personal or corporate. I try to suss out the tools, tips, or systems that can help us handle them.
We just need 1% better to be optimistic about the world. And we're optimistic not because there's fewer problems than we think, because there's a lot of them, and they're big and getting bigger, but because our capacity to solve problems increases faster. What we want to think about these AIs is they're going to be useful. And for us, the main stance that we'll have besides is this, they're going to be artificial aliens. They're going to be alien intelligences. Even if they become conscious, as they become conscious or sentient, they'll be alien. And the image I have is, think of a robotic Spock. It's very smart, can have a conversation. It's everything, but it's not quite human. It's different. And that's, by the way, it's virtue. I have a bias for action, a bias for movement. And I think change for the sake of change is really kind of hard and dangerous. But again, if you can't decide on something and they're kind of about equal, do the one that has more change involved, because it is more likely to help you along on your path to become more fully yourself. It's a nudge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bounce Podcast. You know, the pace of change in technology is incredibly rapid, to say the least, and it continues to accelerate. Not only factors such as Moore's Law, globalization, but the increasing investment in research and development on the AI front is astounding. And on that point, the pace of change is so fast that it has some so worried that in March of this year, 2023, a document was released by the Future of Life Institute proposing a pause to giant AI experiments. Now, this warrants a whole other podcast, which I am planning, so stay tuned for that. But I'll also point you to two others I've done in the last few years. Karthik Hosanagar's one on algorithms and AI, and the others with Rob May, who does a lot of investments in AI. So check them out. The speed of change overall just has led to some incredible innovations, much shorter product life cycles, and the need for us as individuals and businesses to not only adapt to remain competitive, but to remain relevant. So I have an interesting episode for you featuring well-known technologist and futurist Kevin Kelly, who's seen it all. He explores with me not only the recent developments in tech, with every acronym you can think of, from AI, AGI, AR, VR, RTFM. We didn't talk about the last one. That's a joke, winking to the IT folk. To the metaverse, Bitcoin, but also some very good life advice via his new book, Excellent Advice for Living, Wisdom I'd Known or Wish I'd Known Earlier. The book is set to release probably by the time this podcast is published. It will be out there on Amazon, so jump on that. Kevin Kelly, for those of you who don't know, is an American writer, editor, and futurist. He is best known as the co-founder of Wired magazine. Kevin has contributed significantly to the fields of technology, science, and culture. He's also written several books, including Out of Control, The New Biology of Machines, Social Systems and the Economic World, New Rules for the New Economy, What Technology Wants, The Inevitable, Understanding the 12 Technological Forces That Will Shape Our Future. He also co-founded the All Species Foundation, a nonprofit aimed at cataloging and identifying every living species on Earth. In his spare time, he also co-founded the Rosetta Project, which is building an archive of all documented human languages. And he serves on the board of the Long Now Foundation. Needless to say, Kevin's a very interesting guy. Kevin's also an optimist. Top of his website, he's got this message: over the long term, the future is decided by optimists. So in this conversation, we talk about all things AI and the recent developments, ethical and societal implications, current state, conversations around possibly compensating creators for AI training ideas, AI as this universal personal intern, addressing biases. We talk about the extended mind concept and its relation to AI and AI-powered tools. And then we talk about his concept of living in a protopia. embracing problems as opportunities for progress, his opinions on cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. And then we discuss his new book and the advice for living. Some great tips on embracing change, uncertainty, prototyping life, and active listening. So, without further ado, I give you Kevin Kelly.
Kevin, most of my listeners are going to know who you are, but for those who may not, tell us what it is you're doing these days.
Well, I'm one of the co-founders of Wired Magazine, and I've been writing books about the culture of technology. And I also have been a lifelong photographer and just completed a 50-year project of documenting the disappearing cultures and traditions of Asia, between Turkey and Japan and Siberia and Indonesia. It's huge. I continue to try to follow what's happening with AI. And it's just like literally impossible right now because I try to write for Wired on what I think the meaning of the AI stuff is. That's, the text can be covered by other people, but I am looking at the cultural aspects of it. It's almost impossible to keep up. So that's sort of what I do. And I do a piece of art every day. I was doing my own iPad art, and now I do AI art, again, just to kind of keep up.
So you mentioned AI. You're the guy to talk to. You've been this astute observer of technology for decades. Did you have kind of an early online community? You were involved back in the late 80s or early 90s? Right. Yeah. So,
80s, we started the first public access to the internet in 85. Yeah. And I've been online since the early 80s or 81 or so. And so this is sort of my home territory, my home country at this point. In fact, what's interesting is right now feels a lot like the early web felt like the years of the 90s, in the sense that there was so much happening. And unlike crypto, this is actually useful stuff. There's actually stuff you can use. And so there is this kind of a frenzy stampede of people trying stuff, learning new things that nobody had any idea that it could do, disseminating it, and other people picking it up. And the speed is really what's remarkable.
Yeah, I developed a little software tool for content creators and just recently added AI. So that's been kind of fun to play with. But you're a futurist and in my mind, I've read your books and The Inevitable and others. And one of the things I appreciate about you, Kevin, is it seems to me your optimism as to the future as it relates to technology, which is a rare thing now. Right. In fact, you just can't find any positivity. It baffles me. And I certainly understand challenges of any big company and the power they wield and the responsibility they have. But I keep thinking of the goose that laid the golden egg kind of a thing. And it's trite, but it's so true. You remove these companies and we're in a much poorer place, in my opinion. So you have explained why progress would often look like a dystopia to someone with an untrained eye. I'm assuming you're still optimistic.
Well, so I kind of have a general genetic disposition, I kind of an optimistic disposition, but optimism is something you can learn, and you can teach children to be more optimistic. And I have been teaching myself to be even more optimistic than I normally am. So I am getting more optimistic as I get older. So yes, I have a deliberately engineered optimism because it's a learned skill, because it's a informed opinion, because it is a kind of realism that one can acquire. And the root of my optimism comes in kind of a basic observation that if we can create 1% more than we destroy every year, that 1% compounded over time is civilization, and that's worth being optimistic about. So the delta, the difference between a gain and not is very, very tiny and very hard to see in the present. Because what you're going to see is 49.5% of the world is going to be crap and terrible and maybe even harmful. But we only need 50.5% good stuff. We just need 1% better to be optimistic about the world. And we're optimistic not because there's fewer problems than we think, because there's a lot of them. and they're big and getting bigger, but because our capacity to solve problems increases faster and is more than we think. So it's our capacity to be able to address these problems, which in themselves, those new solutions that we make for technological problems will themselves create new problems. That's inevitable. And so you say, well, what's the gain then if we're just making problems and then solving problems that make more problems? Well, what we get out of all that is increased choices and opportunities. And that is the grand bargain of technology, is that we have increasingly more choices, more ways to express ourselves, more likelihood that every person born and unborn yet would have the right tools that they would need to express their genius. Because if you could imagine Mozart being born before we invented the opportunity of the piano or the symphony, what a loss that would have been to the world and to him. And so, or Van Gogh in oil paints, or, Lucas in cinema. So there's a Shakespeare somewhere in the world today, a young Shakespeare, and she's waiting for us to develop the technology that she would need to share her genius with us. We have a moral obligation to keep increasing the possibilities. And that's what we get with technology is, growing up, I spent a lot of time in the villages of Asia, remote, say, a village in the Himalayas with organic food, very strong families, very supportive community, incredible views. And people left, took a one-way bus. All the young people took a one-way bus to the grimy, gritty slums of Kathmandu. Why? Because they had a choice, more of a choice of what they're going to do. If they were stuck in the village, they had one option. They're going to be a farmer or a farmer's wife, maybe a blacksmith. That was it. If they went to the city, maybe they could become a web designer. Maybe they could become a mathematician. Maybe they could become a yoga teacher. I mean, it was just like they had choices, and that's what we get with technology.
You still believe we're living, I think you coined the term a protopia, a world that keeps getting better, one baby step at a time. And
right. Very, 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 very slowly without the lack of problems. Problems actually propel progress. Problems are the opportunities in disguise. And so there's no denying the problems. We can't get rid of them, but we can make solutions and increase our choices and then deal with the problems that those solutions will create.
Yeah, you say the solution is not less technology, but better technology. So to that point, let's talk about where we are right now. It's an exciting time to be alive, but there's a lot going on. You mentioned it right up front. Let's just jump in. So artificial intelligence.
A+.
So you're giving a thumbs up on where we are right now with AI.
Yes, right. It's fantastic. I can tell you right now, you're not going to lose your job to AI. Don't worry about it. You might lose your job to description, but don't worry about losing your job to AI. It's simply not going to happen.
So you think this is going to be a supportive technology like technology has always been? Right.
I call these new AI chatbots, the generative tools, I call them the universal personal intern. So everybody will have interns, like you have a personal navigator in your car with the GPS, and you have a personal librarian at your tool search bar. Now we're going to have personal interns, and they're going to do all kinds of incredible things. You can just see what's happening online, people using them, and you can have more than one. But, their intern work, it'll be embarrassing to release the intern's work as your own just because people can tell. It's kind of like you need to check their work. You need to work with them. You need to kind of push them to be excellent because they're basically going to be mediocre because they were trained on the average human. So they're going to be kind of average. But they're very, very useful to get going, to work with a blank page, to have another set of eyes on it, to check it, to brainstorm with. So the universal personal intern is what this current round is going to be. And they'll be everywhere. They'll be on all the tools. And that, by the way, is a sign of success, was when technologies basically become invisible and we don't even see them, like the motors in your house. I think AI is underhyped for the long term and overhyped for the short term.
Underhyped for the long term. So you mentioned some people are certainly freaked out. What is the freak out about, in your opinion?
Well, there's a couple. There's a couple of them. Most of them is people losing their jobs. And what's really interesting is you ask people about losing their jobs, and they say, "Well, I don't think my job is going to go away, but I'm concerned about some other imaginary third person who might lose their job."
I have a good friend of mine. Yeah, I'm asking
Well,
for
not even that. No, it's just I know of, or just theoretically, this third person could lose their job. Like, AI artists. It's like, well, I haven't lost any work, but I could imagine losing work, or I can imagine a friend losing work. So this is an imaginary third person worry, which is a very typical in technology, a panic cycle. So we're in a panic cycle, and there's a kind of a routine panic cycle we spin through when new technologies come along. And one of the first things people are concerned about is that they aren't working perfectly. All right. So there's there's biases in AI. Well, of course there are biases. It's been trained on the average human. So it's gonna be as sexist, racist, and mean as the average human. But we're not going to accept that. We're going to say, no, it has to be better than us. Okay, well, we can put in that code. What does it mean to be better than us? And that's really
and by the way, if they do that, we'll never hit AGI.
right.
AGI is us, right?
But we don't. Yeah, but we don't know. We have no consensus on
it's
what
this disobedient, human.
We don't have a consensus on what that behavior looks like. Is it just woke? Is it something different? So we don't know. We can't tell it right now because our own ethics and morality are very shallow, very inconsistent, very vague, and so we don't even know what it means, what we want the AI to behave as. And so we can't really program it yet. But that conversation is something we're going to be engaged in. And that's going to benefit us because as we try to teach our children to be better than us, it helps us become better ourselves. So that's one thing that people are concerned about, they're freaking out about, is the internal biases because they too much resemble us in our reality. And the second one, so the first one was losing a job. You're not going to lose your job. The other one was in the bias, and then the third one is the fact that these have been trained on human creation, human work, writing or photography, pictures and stuff, and a lot of people feel that they creators aren't getting credit or any of the money that's going to be made from the great engines of AI, which are making a lot of money right now, and that they're not paying the actual people that the AI
they borrow from,
borrowing from. And so that's a very complicated question. The reality is that the actual influence that any individual human will have on the results is very, very minimal. It may or may not be possible to trace back that kind of influence. If you just think about yourself, you say you're going to paint something.
All the time, things come up that.
Who are you influenced by?
Yeah.
Can you unravel that? Is that even possible?
Yeah.
Then there's this issue of how do we manage it? And the artists are right now who are upset about it are trying to evoke copyright. And that's another issue too, just in general. So this intellectual property stuff, the Supreme Court right now has not allowed it to be copyrighted at all, which is not going to be sustainable because it says here's something that can't be copyrighted. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever because they're saying it can't be copyrighted because only humans can copyright things. But even more importantly, the artists with the kind of talking about not the ownership of it, but the influence of it are invoking copyright. But this is the wrong model. This is not about copyright. I think we might need some new rights like the right of reference. Like an R, the right of reference of like, we understand there's kind of a new intellectual property right, which is referencing something. And so there might be some kind of a Creative Commons or something like that, where you have the right of reference. Allow people to reference it in training or not. And so we probably need some new ideas and concepts and language to kind of deal with this issue, because there'll be training sets that will be curated who it's trained on, and there will be some where there's only opt-in, so only the artists will opt in, and there'll be deeply curated ones where I think there's going to be artists clamoring to be included in the influencing of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're at the early stages of that. I think these are tractable problems, meaning that they're solvable, whereas the issue of the bias, that's a very difficult problem to solve, as I said, because we don't know what our own solution is for us.
Yeah, and I think I've heard you talk about longer term, and the possibility of sentience or artificial general intelligence, whatever.
I don't think general intelligence is a thing. I think that's a misnomer, a misunderstanding of our own intelligence. I don't think we have a general intelligence. I think we have just like we're not a general organism. There are no general organisms in life. A very specific organism that's been hacked, so to speak. This hacking its way for this fit of this particular survival. And I think our intelligence is the same. We have there are elements. There are kind of, I would say, universal elements of intelligence, primitive cognition modes, like deduction or symbolic reasoning and those kinds of things. There are particular mixture of intelligence is not necessarily general in any way at all. And we're going to be probably, when we map all the possible intelligences, we're going to be way out in a corner, just like we are in a galaxy. We're not the center of anything. We're always at the edge. There are thousands of different varieties or species of thinking, and ours is not at the center. We're not general in any way.
Well, for lack of a better term, as to this form of artificial intelligence reaching some level of human sentience or what have you, I'm assuming you don't think we're anywhere near that, right? What we have right now is narrow AI, right? So, do you think that's way out there in the future, even possible?
Yeah, as I was saying, I think all intelligence is narrow. I know what you're saying. You're saying,
yeah, I don't have a better word for.
Right. So sentience and consciousness, these are all not binary things. They're continuums. They're degrees. And so all these multiple dimensions are all degrees. And so we can have something that could be very highly conscious and then not very self-aware. You could have something that was incredibly conscious but emotionally dead. You could have something that was very, very emotionally sophisticated but not very conscious. And so we're going to make up a variety of different kinds of minds with all different qualities. And consciousness, intelligence, sentience are just some of those dimensions. They're all continuous. And there are a lot of very intelligent AIs that we're going to have that we don't want to be conscious at all. You don't want your car to be conscious while it's driving. You want it to focus entirely on driving. You don't want it to worry about whether it should really major in finance instead of English, right? So you're just going to go.
You don't want a default mode network in a car where its mind is wandering.
Right, exactly. And so consciousness is a liability in most cases.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of different qualities. They're all gradients. They're all continuums. They're not binary. And we'll have things that are a little bit more than this and a little bit, but they're all mixtures. We'll mix and match. It's like a machine. Machines are complicated. They may have a little motor. They have some levers in it. Got some buttons. There's all kinds of different arrangements. You can take the primitive parts of machines to make all kinds of machines, and they're all different in the sense of their function. And we're going to engineer AIs to be very, very different to do things. And maybe you can make a Swiss Army knife of an AI that kind of does a little bit of everything. Okay. But there's an engineering trade-off at all times, which is you cannot optimize everything. You always have to have trade-offs. If you can optimize this, then it's going to cost something over here. And so what we want to think about these AIs is they're going to be useful. And for us, the main stance that we'll have besides is this, they're going to be artificial aliens. They're going to be alien intelligences. Even if they become conscious, as they become conscious or sentient, they'll be alien. And the image I have is, think of a robotic Spock. It's very smart, can have a conversation. It's everything, but it's not quite human. It's different. And that's, by the way, it's virtue. The reason why you have Spock on your spaceship is because you want to work. You want to think differently. You want to have different ideas.
I want someone a little more objective than I might be at the moment.
Well, objective, but that's one quality, but there are other qualities. It could be more creative in a different way. Creativity, it turns out to be something that we can synthesize. So that's what these current generative AIs are doing. They're synthesizing lowercase creativity. And they're being creative in a way that we would not be creative. And that's their benefit is that they can have ideas that we cannot get to by ourselves, but the ideas themselves are probably not sufficient. So we need to work with them.
So you're a futurist, and you've got your finger on the pulse of most of these technologies, and write about it and what have you. So, and again, the inevitable is one example, that book. But so if we were to stone's throw, let's say 10 years out, what do you picture? What are you seeing today that you think we're going to wind up with 10 years from now? And I've just picked 10 years, so it's not too far out there.
Yeah, that's a very fair and good exercise. So right now, the real buzz is all these generative AIs, and what's interesting is the AI stuff that they're doing.
And sorry, Kelly, and this is for everybody. We're talking about OpenAI, Chat GPT 3,
DALL-E,
now 4,
Midjourney,
DALL-E. Okay, yeah,
this current wave of stuff.
Yes,
and AI that they're doing is actually not new. The capacities are not new. What is new? What's wowing everybody? What's kind of rocking our socks is the fact that we now have a interface to them, a conversational interface. So all these things that they're doing, they could have done 10 years or 5 years ago, but you would need programmers and AI experts and all kind of other people to kind of manage them. But now we have the big bang where you can just have a conversation with them. And not just like Siri, where you give some instructions. No, you're having a conversation, it's a back and forth. And that conversational interface is the thing. It's like, again, it reminded me of the 80s and 90s in the web, where there was the internet. The internet was around for a long time, and it was really hard to use. You had to have command line typing. It was all text. And then the web came, big bang, because now suddenly there was this visual interface to the web.
And there's easy access, and there's
everybody could use it.
A format too, yeah.
And that's what's happening right now with AI. The AI's been around. Now suddenly there's an interface, the conversational interface of these large language models. They allow you to have a conversation, have it remember. And so that is the thing. So this conversational interface will go everywhere. Okay, we're going to just put it everywhere where we're talking, conversing, dialoguing back and forth. And that's the real thing, is the back and forth, the clarity that you get, the cooperation, the collaboration that's possible with a conversation, not just with kind of giving it one set of instructions like Siri and then hoping for the best. So this collaborating with it is the new thing. And there is sort of right now, no limit to what we could do with that, even with the current levels. Obviously, there'll be new levels, but even if there isn't new levels of intelligence, there's going to be just this interfacing, sweeping everything from cars to your phones to inert things. It's the dream that people have been talking about for a long time of collaborating, but that collaboration is fairly limited right now because these AIs can only do one kind of cognition.
And you've got to have some knowledge of good prompting. That, I think, to your point, is going to get better, where some sentiment analysis or some way that interface is going to understand you more. That's going to get easier and easier, I would think.
Yes. So there will become another language. So already the programmers, the coders, are using the generative AIs like Copilot and others to program and code things. And so instead of having to code something in Python, they're actually coding in English. They're giving the instructions in English, and the AI is turning it into Python. Right now, again, all the AI that we're seeing is because of one type. We have not synthesized the other kinds of cognition in our own brains, like deductive reasoning, symbolic reasoning. And so there may or may not be advances in that in 10 years. If there is, then what I would imagine is that we are going to see them, these collaborators, enter into people's work and job in a very serious way. So the 10 years in the future, if you look out the window, I don't think there's going to be much change in 10 years of the physical world. Maybe we might be able to get a little closer to self-driving cars, but I think that's the thing about self-driving cars is not, you just can't change the cars. You have to change the infrastructure as well. So that's going to be a very long process. Maybe.
Yeah, I just saw a video of a guy with a jetpack flying around. It was very cool, and I thought to myself, immediately the problems stood out to me that
right.
Physical flying objects are just fraught with all kind of. But anyway, But people
right.
tend to think of that as future, some
Yeah.
physical manifestation.
So I think for the most part, 10 years, the world outside will look very, very similar. Maybe, again, some highways have been converted to self-driving, but we're not going to see a massive change in that. I think AI does, ubiquitous, cheap AI does help the metaverse come. I think that's required to do the metaverse. So part of the challenge is not just making the smart glasses. I know Apple's working on that, but I think maybe in 10 years we'll have that solved. So the smart glasses requires huge amounts of computation and bandwidth. And so that AI computation is necessary to do the kind of world experiencing that everybody dreams of.
So you're a believer in the metaverse.
I am believing as the next step. Again, I think it's going to be very slow in coming. And I have to tell you, I have been wrong about this before, thinking that it would become earlier than it did.
Why is that a next thing? And are we talking in your mind? Are we talking real Ready Player One? Is that what we're?
No, we're not.
No.
Ready Player One is closer to what I would call virtual reality, a closed world, meaning that you shut out the real world. You're in an alternative world.
Oh, are you talking more AR? Are you talking more?
I talk AR. I call it the mirror, a metaverse, and that's what Facebook is working on. This is the overlay of the digital world on top of the real world.
Okay.
So it's not Ready Player One. It's the opposite.
I'm not sure I understood that from Meta either.
Oh yeah.
You're putting on a headset and you're getting into a different world.
No, what they're trying to make, all these whole, Magic Leap and everybody, Microsoft is trying to make
I knew Magic Leap was doing that. Yeah, sorry.
Magic Leap, right? They're trying to do this version where you have the overlay of you have the convergence of the
that I get, yes,
and the real world together, and that is very, very powerful, and partly is that it goes from something you carry to something you wear. That's the shift. Is that it's not just in your pocket, but you're wearing it, and you don't have to have screens. You can have your big screen wherever you want, just sitting in Starbucks. There are a lot of problems about this, a lot of issues that have to be worked out. But I think that's the general trend that I see it going forward. And
you think we hit that 10 years?
Or what I'm saying is AI was a crucial component of that in order to be able to do these computations about putting you and having this world created individually. And so if we continue to have a kind of acceleration in AIs, then I could see in 10 years the very, very beginning of some people, and mostly in enterprise. You're first going to encounter this where you work while you're working rather than at home or on the street. And often with people who don't have desk jobs, like people who work in warehouses or doing construction, that's where these things will come.
I get it. Or medical application. Yeah.
Medical training, schools. So I think in 10 years, I could see that happening within 10 years, the beginnings of that. Not necessarily mass adoption, but early adopters. I mean, there are other things, but I think the AI is an enabling technology. Again, it enables itself, may not change anything directly, but it enables things like the metaverse and things like quantified self that I was involved with very early. This idea that you're tracking yourself. So the problem that didn't go anywhere was, yes, it became much easier to, like Fitbit and Apple Watch, to track your body. But the problem was you generate all this data. It's like, what am I going to do with this data? The data is meaningless. Well, AI can actually help find meaning in that data. And so AI is an enabling technology that can enable the quantified self data that we're tracking and change, our health and behaviors and all that kind of stuff. So that's a way in which I think in 10 years we could have, again, more self-tracking stuff to affect and improve our health and being health, and have that tied to doctors as a baseline. So that would be something I would see in 10 years, where we have more devices that can constantly monitor us, and then, which we don't have right now, the AI to understand and give us the signal out of all that noise.
What are you worried about?
Worried about the weaponization of AI, mostly cyber war. And I'm worried about cyber conflict, let's call it. because we don't have very good rules. We don't have an understanding. We have lots of treaties for other kind of weapons. We don't have a very good deep treaty on cyber because it's very, very hard to be accountable. And in the nature of it, it's almost unaccountable. And so I just think that there could be some really bad things that happen or that would drive the adversaries right now together to agree on that we're not going to do this and not going to do that. You know, is it okay to take down someone's bank system? Is it okay to interfere with hospitals? We don't have an agreement on that right now. And so that's, I think there could be some bad things because we don't have those agreements. And it is very, very hard to kind of tell when someone's hacking, who's hacking, and where they're coming from.
What's your opinion of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin? I'm going to lump everything together. I know they're not.
Yeah,
I know blockchain is the underlying technology. But
so what I say about that is I'm always glad to have a conversation about crypto with one caveat is that we can't talk about money. We can't talk about making money, saving money, growing money. Talk about the other value that it brings, and that's a very short conversation, which means that there isn't. So it's all about money so far. It's a finance thing, and I find it very boring and very, very limited. Undoubtedly, the idea of a chained blockchain public ledger is a brilliant, brilliant technological solution. I think it's still looking for the right problem to solve. You know, my hat's off to those who want to explore it, but I think as a currency, it's not really where it's at. There may be, you know, the idea of governance and stuff was really interesting, but you know, I grew up in the 60s and 70s with hippie communes and live on a commune and work at a co-op before you decide to do it now. Right?
Have something of value to transact with, you know, a goat, some coins, what have you.
No,
So
it's just, the cooperatives are very, very difficult for humans to maneuver. So the thing about code, about blockchain is that here's the thing: is they say
trustless is tough. Trustless is
but they say it's immutable. The code is immutable. You can't change it, and they see that as a feature. But for most human interactions and institutions, that's a liability. If you can never change the contract, that's like it's almost useless. What happens if a dollar goes away? What happens? I mean, it's just we have so many unexpected things that we're always changing agreements and
interest rate, inflation. Yeah, that's
exactly
that's where the rubber meets the road. I
right. So it's really not necessarily a benefit. It's more of a bug.
So right now, if you were to say, because you sounded like when we first got on, you're excited about what's happening with AI right now. This seems to be one of the very exciting things.
This is the main event right now. Again, we're overestimating what it can do. It's very limited, but that limit, even with that limit in terms of cognition limit, it's like the web. There's just so many ways to apply it, and that's going to be the excitement. So it's going to be applied everywhere, and that's exciting. It's not that it's going to become super, super intelligent. It's that we're going to take this very limited thing and apply it everywhere, and that will be a big enough revolution.
Real quickly, as we move off, technology-wise, what do you recommend? What's cool? What are some cool tools that we can buy, get access right now? Outside of Chad and some of the...
Yeah, I have a little weekly thing, recommendo, where every week I recommend two things, and my colleagues also two. We have half-page recommendation. But I would
give us three things. Give us three.
Well, you were mentioning at the beginning of this, you were thinking about an iPad. So the real bargain, if you get an iPad and interested in art, there's only one program to do, and it's the ultimate bargain because it's $10. One time, $10. It's called Procreate. It is the program for painting or drawing on an iPad with the stylus. It is just transformative. And for me, I've been making art all my life. It was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is perfect. It's very intuitive, very easy, very powerful. A child could use it, and professional artists can both be exploited. And it's just really great. So anyway, Procreate for the iPad with the stylus is fantastic. I love to hike, walk in the woods. Get the app called Seek.
Seek.
Which SEEK or Seek, I think is the name of it now. It has been changed. It is a plant, flower, mushroom identifier. So
my wife will love that.
You use your phone. You come up to a plant or a flower or something you don't know what it is. You put your phone there, and it will tell you the species. Then you can go look it up and learn more about it. It's fantastic. The hit rate is pretty good. I would say it's about 95% usually able to identify.
Would trees fall in within the okay
trees with the leaves?
Because I wanted to do that with palm trees, and the hit rate was horrible.
Yeah, so it's really good. There's a related one called Merlin, which will identify from Cornell, which will identify birds by their song. If you're walking, you can hear the birds.
That's cool.
And they can be pretty far away, and it will still identify what that bird is. So those are those transform for me. Taking a walk in the woods or walking along, even in a city, you can identify plants and flowers.
Tell me about the book. Why? So, you wrote this for your grandchildren?
No, I started writing for my kids, my adult kids, and each page has just a little tiny, two or three per page of bits of advice that I accumulated and wish I'd known earlier. And some of them range from being very, very practical, like, for example, if I get an invitation to talk or go somewhere in 6 months to visit outfit or to have coffee with somebody, whatever it is, I ask myself, would I want to do this if it was tomorrow morning? I kind of future project. Like, that sounds really cool, but would I want to do it tomorrow morning? And if I don't want to do it tomorrow morning, then I say no, because it will be eventually tomorrow morning. So this idea of a bit of advice, which is to repeat to myself when I get an invitation, is that sounds really great. Go visit someone's launch party. Would I want to do if it was tomorrow? And so that's a piece of advice that I wish I'd known earlier, because it really transformed my schedule. Another example would be if I have something in my household and I know I have it, but I can't find where it is. Let's say this little flashlight. And when I do finally find it, I repeat to myself as I'm putting it back, don't put it back where you found it. Put it back where you first looked for it. Because that's where you go.
That's great advice. I actually have done that. So your publicist gave me a pre-pub copy, and I've got a few of my favorites here. I'd like to quote to you, and then tell me where they came from. Like, so you have one here that says, whenever you can't decide which path to take, pick the one that produces change.
Yeah.
Now, tell me what that means to you.
Well, I have a bias. I have a bias for action, a bias for movement. And I think change for the sake of change is really kind of hard and dangerous. But again, if you can't decide on something and they're kind of about equal, do the one that has more change involved, because it is more likely to help you along on your path to become more fully yourself. It's a nudge. We are people of habit, and habits are good for many things, but they're also stifling for others. And so we want to make sure, constantly testing ourselves, are we really sure we want to keep doing this? And, favoring change is one way to kind of ask that question, so we don't repeat ourselves.
And there's one more here that I really liked, because it's about listening well. And listening, I've never had a heuristic to help me other than just reminding myself, pay attention or something. But you have here, listening well is a superpower. While listening to someone you love, keep asking them, is there more, until there is no more. I like that because it's this heuristic that kind of boils down. If you follow it, the result is kind of listening.
Yeah. I mean, like, oftentimes one of the best thing a friend or spouse can do is to listen. And in those kind of cases, the active listening is to solicit, to say, is there more? Because there usually is more. And it's, this is related to another piece of advice in the book, which is, if you want to get to the truth of something, you've got to ask a person 3 times. You've got to say, is there more? And then you're going to hear, or why behind that. And you'll hear another reason. And then you say, and then, is there more behind that? So you need to go 3 times to get to the bottom, so to speak, of something. And that's the best way. If you actually want to, find out what's really going on, you have to be willing to go down to the 3rd level.
And then the final one I just kind of pulled up here that I really liked. Prototype your life. Try stuff instead of making grand plans.
Right.
I like that, because I tend to think in terms of experiments. Is that kind of the idea?
It is like, rather than you're going to go off and start a business, doing, I don't know, like a maker space, or you're going to switch careers, is prototype it first, try it out, do something for 6 months with the idea that you'll decide at the end of that, or new career, volunteer for the same occupation for a while. You try things out. That's career advice, but also it's true for anything. It's like this again. I wish I'd known this earlier, but when we do remodels, or just an example, I would, like I say, remodel a kitchen. I would do a prototype, full-scale cardboard version of it to work out the kinks, because it's very hard to imagine spaces and things in your head, even drawings. But you do something full-scale cardboard prototype, it's like you really get the sense of like, is this bench too high? Is this the right width? Is this in the right location? I prototype my books. So I have this book here, and I made a prototype book. Literally, I'd made a book, bound things, to check out the size, to check out the layout. And then did another version. And when I did my big Asia book, I made 3 or 4 different versions of prototypes of the book, binding the book, taking pages and having a bookbinder make books out of them just to prototype them. Because when you write a book, you are going to make drafts, and you may throw the first draft away. And that's what builders talk about, making one to throw away. It seems to me, when I was young, that was like impossible to do. The effort of making the thing to completion was so great that the idea of then throwing it away and doing it again was like, I can't know if I can do that. But then you watch on YouTube any of the great makers, and they're constantly iterating things. They're constantly prototyping something, getting it going, making one that they know that they're going to basically toss and then do it again with what they learned. And anything great is made that way, from, the Hamilton musical, which they prototyped for years and years, they call it workshopping, to, the great Pixar movies, in which they, again, had multiple drafts completely done. You and I would read it and say, that's pretty good. Nope, they're going to throw it away. They're going to prototype it and make it better. So I think that's good for making things, and it's good for your life as well, with this idea that you're going to try and experiment your way rather than have a grand plan that you stick to without deviation.
Yeah, I think it kind of mitigates a bit of fear of failing at the thing, right, or the result. You're not stuck on the actual result. This is an experiment, right, and experiments are made to fail and try.
Yeah, exactly. That is a good way to put it, which is we're going to make something and we're going to fail on the way. We're going to fail forward, is the way they say it in Silicon Valley. You're failing forward. And so that failing forward is part of the prototyping mode. And we're going to make something that we're going to throw away. And that is something I really wished I knew earlier.
Yeah. When is the book out officially?
May 2nd. It'll be on sale. There are pre-sales on Amazon. You can pre-order on Amazon. It's a little book. It's really great, I think, for the young at heart. Some advice for a 20-year-old. Like, if you're a 20-year-old, try and work on something where they don't have a name for what it is that you're doing, where there's no language, where it takes some time to explain to your mother what it is that you do. That's a really good sign.
I read that, and I thought in my life, there were so many times in my life where when people asked me what I was doing, I was like, I don't know how to say
it. Yeah. That's a good sign.
Because it was so new, everything was like,
you're at a fertile place.
That's a really cool,
where the breakthroughs happen, and there's no competition, or there's little competition. And then also, if you're 20, try and spend, if you're at all possible, and people have different resources, but try to spend a hunk of time, like a year or say, doing something that looks nothing like success. It's kind of crazy, weird, unexplainable, maybe dangerous, seems to be a waste of time to some people. It's unproductive, unprofitable. It looks nothing like success. And that experience will later on become the foundation and a touchstone for your own success.
These are haikus, Kevin. These are Zen koans. We could. No, this is great.
So I'll end with one Zen koan. You mentioned the key word there. So my shortest bit of advice for your own life is don't aim to be the best. Aim to be the only.
The Tibetan bowl just went off. Bong. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. People can find the book, you said, in May, right?
Or on Amazon right now. Excellent advice for a living. Wisdom wish I'd known earlier. I think you'll enjoy it.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah. So I recommend everybody jump on there. And they can go to your website elsewhere to.
My initials, kk.org. Been around a long time. My email's there as well. Very public. So, and I'm Kevin2, the number Kevin2 Kelly on the socials.
Thank you so much for coming on, Kevin.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, do share it with your friends and on your social platforms. Big thanks to Sam Williams, my audio guy, and the beautiful bumper music you're hearing is Michael Petrovich's Bella Luna. For all my show notes or resource links, visit larryweeks.com, and we will talk again soon.